Today, I'm going to show you what you should know about Ghislaine Maxwell's family. I know the Ghislaine Maxwell trial is on right now. It took a long time coming, and it looks like it's shaping up to be a complete farce. But in the video that I'm going to present to you today, I hope you'll see why it shouldn't be. Ghislaine Maxwell was just one piece of a major operation. What I'm going to show you today is the connections that come off of Ghislaine's two sisters, Christine and Isabel. And we are talking about some very deep infiltration into the highest levels of the U.S. government, possibly through their software companies. And then I'm going to, in the second half, pull some threads that come off of the connections of Isabel and Christine's husbands, of which there are 4. And 3 of them are extremely interesting. And finally, at the end of this rebroadcast, it's about the last 10 minutes of the hour-long re-upload, is a fascinating story that connects through one of the Maxwell sisters to their husband's father, who was a founding member of something called the Rocket Boys, which was Jet Propulsion Labs, which was the precursor organization of what we now know as NASA. And you are not going to believe this story. All of it is mind-blowing, but I gotta warn you, it's about it's an avalanche of information. It's an avalanche. So you will be overwhelmed at the end of it. Some of the references you might think I should have done a better job explaining, but you have to understand, this was just a part of 12 deep dive videos that I did into Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell, Robert Maxwell, the Maxwell sisters, the scientists involved, the Edge organization, all kinds of things that surround this. I hope by the end of this hour that I'm rebroadcasting right now, you'll go back and look at some of my older Epstein videos, and you'll start to see how everything, what we're going through right now, even with COVID and the bizarre globalist agendas, the nonsense things they're doing all over the world and restricting freedoms, I think you're going to see that it is truly all connected. Watch for the threads of engineering humanity and compromising officials that run through what I'm about to show you. Okay, because the video is so long on its own, the 2-part video, I've melded 2 of my videos together here, edited them a bit. I'm going to stop talking now. I'm going to let the videos play, but before I go, don't forget to go over to my website, which is all revamped and new, amazingpolly.net. I've got new things on there like Polly's picks for videos that I've seen that I really like, or articles I've seen that I recommend. I've put new links into the slideshow for websites that you might be interested in, and I've got a new blog post up there, so I'm really trying to keep up with it now. amazingpolly.net. On the contact page is where you can find ways to contribute to my work if you would like to do that. There's an online payment form, and there's also my P.O. box address there if you'd like to send something through the mail. The mail seems to be normal again right now, so that's a good thing. All right, everybody, enjoy this hour-long deep dive into Ghislaine Maxwell's 2 sisters and their really insane connections inside and outside of the United States. In today's video, what I want to do is look at 2 of the sisters of Ghislaine Maxwell. I want to look at Isabel and Christine. In this video, I'm going to present to you a brief history of those sisters' involvement in the software field, and in fact, the information field in general. Here they are here, the twin Maxwell sisters. They're a very important tentacle of the Epstein case. Although it's more accurately, I suppose, described at this point as the Maxwell case, because Jeffrey Epstein is dead. He committed suicide in his cell. And so whatever the reality of that situation is, for our intents and purposes, here in the way things really go, I suggest to you, Jeffrey Epstein will always remain dead. He's not going to make some surprise appearance at a trial. We're not going to see him anywhere working with the government. I really just don't think anything like that happened. That being the case, I think we should focus on the living. And most of the blame at this point that could be pointed anywhere for the sex trafficking operation that Jeffrey Epstein is accused of running. The blame for that now should shift to Ghislaine Maxwell. She has been accused of being the procurer and groomer of the underage girls for Jeffrey Epstein's operation. And while we're talking about it, what was that operation really? Now, aside from servicing the needs of rapists and perverts, it was also a compromise factory, a blackmail and extortion factory when you look at it. They made sure to go after very rich, powerful, connected people. And then, of course, they could get those people to do whatever they wanted if those people were caught in compromising situations with Epstein, Maxwell, or any of the girls, right? The whole Maxwell family, I think, is in on this game. Their whole raison d'etre is information. After all, let's not forget, let's look for a second at the father, the patriarch of the Maxwell family, Robert Maxwell. Robert Maxwell, a.k.a. Robert Jones, a.k.a. Robert du Maurier, a.k.a. Abraham Lashby, a.k.a. Jan Ludwig Hock. He's been accused, credibly, of being involved with the KGB. We know he was British military intelligence, and it's possible that he was in MI6. He's also been accused of being Mossad by Seymour Hersh and many other people. People also are saying that Jeffrey Epstein could have been a Mossad agent as well. So, given that we know for a fact Robert Maxwell was involved in a lot of shady dealings with spy agencies, and his daughter Ghislaine was involved with Jeffrey Epstein, who appears to have been running a blackmail operation. What can we make of his two daughters, Christine and Isabel, when we find out that software that they have created is installed in almost all of the important companies and many government agencies, especially in the US? I'm not sure about what they've done overseas, but it's possible that the software is in there too. But you'll see as we go along that the penetration of Maxwell-linked software into our way of life and our most important systems is deep. It's very, very embedded in there. Now, I'm not alleging, I can't prove that there's anything wrong with what these women did. Illegally, so to speak. But given the history of their family members, and as you'll see, given the connections with these software companies and who the players are, one can imagine that there might be backdoors in some of this software. And if so, this should alert everybody to how badly the U.S. has been compromised. All right, I'm going to lay out my case. I'll start now. I want to introduce this to you. This is from a blog I found from 2006. Bud Gray, he's been on to Christine Maxwell for a long time. And he introduces the problem well. So, he says, what could be wrong with putting an experienced and acclaimed information technology data management expert in charge of upgrading and centralizing all our records nationally in order to fight crime and protect us against terrorism? Even if she is a foreign-born and raised, globalist-sympathizing UN patsy married to a French intellectual and living in France with ties to Latin America. I mean, what's wrong with that? Exactly. It's hard to understand why Christine Maxwell's software was adopted as widely as it was. And let me show you. Okay, first of all, let's talk about Magellan. A lot of people have heard of this. Magellan was Christine and Isabel's joint venture. It was a search engine that I think got pioneered in the early 90s. This person says in 1993. It really looks like an early Google to me. And here's Christine here pitching it on some program. It ended up that Magellan was sold to a company called Excite, And if you're not as old as I am, you probably have no idea about these companies at all. But just suffice to say, this is pretty significant. These women designed a search engine that was adopted and used by bigger and bigger companies along the way. But Christine Maxwell, it turns out, has been doing this. She's been getting ready to make a computer search engine for decades. Check this article out here. Crazy answers found. This is from a paper in Wisconsin in 1986. Information on demand. Christine Maxwell is a specialist in finding the answer to offbeat questions. Maxwell is president of the computer database company that retrieves information, however obscure, amusing, or crazy, from a variety of sources that include more than 300 databases, millions of published articles, market research studies, trade association publications, corporate intelligence, and industry surveys, it says. But here it says Information on Demand was founded in 1971. And then they talk a little bit about how at the beginning it was this collection of people, actual people that Christine Maxwell could call up or fax things to, and they would run around and find all the information pertaining to the subject matter she asked them to research, and then they would send it back to her. And then Christine would compile it and give it to her clients who had phoned to ask her a question. So it was like Google, but with real people back then. A little note here. A little note of interest here. It says, the network doesn't stop there. IOD staff has often retrieved information from sources as far away as the Lenin Library in the Soviet Union. Interesting that they would mention Russia, right? I mean, remember, their father had alleged ties back to the KGB. Here it also says that the offices for her company are in Berkeley, California. Yet another red flag goes up. Then if I tried to follow the trail of Information on Demand to see what happened to it, I mean, maybe it is the thing that turned into Magellan. Possibly, I don't know. But what I did find along the way was something from 1989. Here is the Proceedings of the Library of Congress Network Advisory Committee meeting in December 1989. And we see that Christine Maxwell's company, Information on Demand, is listed as participating in that. Along with Information on Demand, they also referred to two other companies that have roots back in the Maxwell family. Pergamon Copy Service, copies of U.S. and non-U.S. patents and trademarks and published applications, and then Adonis, which is the full text of 219 biomedical journals, and Pergamon Press is involved with that as well. So that's the Library of Congress. The Library of Congress stores, it's supposedly the biggest library in the world. Let's put it that way. And there's Christine Maxwell and the Maxwell group of companies before her father died, Pergamon Press, involved in the pitch to work with the Library of Congress to collate, computerize, store, reorganize, and distribute all of that information. That is huge. In that paper, we see what Christine Maxwell's pitch is. The federal libraries need to reassess current restrictions imposed on their use. In principle, Information on Demand is prepared and would like to enter into a joint venture, which, for instance, could better disseminate the information held in federal libraries. I wonder if that ever happened. I did some digging to see if I could find out, but I can't tell. But what is interesting is that they had a new guy come in at that point, and he started the first ever program where private funders could participate in the Library of Congress on some level. I'm not sure whatever happened to it, but we're going to leave that as an open question. We're going to think that she probably did get some kind of contract, because if you know how these government panels work, they invite very specific people to give presentations. They've already kind of decided who they want to work with. And she was invited to be a member of that advisory committee. It should also be noted that Robert Maxwell was already raising eyebrows back in the UK when his daughter and his company were represented at that Library of Congress advisory committee. He had already been being looked at for possibly engaging in illegal activities back in Britain by that time. So I don't know if the Library of Congress knew what they were doing or not. Moving on from the Library of Congress, element of this, we go back to this article, How Globalists Are E-Managing Us, and the author Bud Gray links to an article from the Washington Post from 2006. It's called FBI Shows Off Counterterrorism Database. The investigative data warehouse launched in January 2004. And it says that the FBI's database has more than 659 million records culled from more than 50 FBI and other government agency sources. So what company made the FBI their new database? Which company installed the software for this? It says here, the system designed by Gilead Inc. of Amherst, Mass. The owner and co-founder of Gilead Inc. is Christine Maxwell. This is such a boom. Now we've got information on demand at the Library of Congress and Gilead at the FBI. I don't know if there's anything wrong with it. All I'm saying is she comes from a spy family. And software is notorious for having backdoors built into it so that you can infiltrate the data. And once you've infiltrated the data, think of the power that you can have. But there's more. I'd like to draw your attention to this. To 1999, when Gilead partnered with Hewlett-Packard. If we go back here to How Globalists Are E-Managing Us, it says that Gilead jumped from the shadows recently by announcing a $24.5 million investment from Hewlett-Packard Company. The two companies also formed a strategic alliance in which Gilead will use HP servers, while HP will explore how to use the startup's search technology in its products. HP will explore how to use Gilead's search technology in its products, its servers. HP made servers. Now look at this. Carly Fiorina started as chief executive officer for HP in 1999. In a September 2015 interview with Michael Isikoff, Fiorina said that in the weeks following the September 11th terror attacks in 2001, she received a phone call from Michael Hayden, then the director of the National Security Agency, asking her assistance in providing HP computer servers to the NSA for expanded surveillance. Fiorina acknowledged she complied with Hayden's request, redirecting trucks of HP computer servers that were on their way to retail stores over to Washington's Beltway. If HP installed the Gilead software into its servers and then delivered truckloads of those servers to the NSA, what might that mean? Now you'll notice that Gilead software went into HP servers possibly in 2000, in maybe 1999, but definitely in the year 2000, which is before the September 11th attacks. Now, we know in here it says that Fiorina sent these truckloads of servers to the NSA after the terror attacks. But had she sent any before that? Had the NSA just purchased them regularly before that, I wonder? This really does leave a question as to 9/11, as to whether or not the NSA's computers were functioning properly before September 11th. I don't know, but I wonder why this happened. In Wikipedia it says, Carly Fiorina spent 2 years leading the Central Intelligence Agency's External Advisory Board from 2007 to 2009 and became chair of that board when the board was first created in 2007 by then CIA Director Michael Hayden. Michael Hayden is the guy who asked her for the servers after September 11th. He was working at the NSA then. Then he transferred to the CIA, and guess what? He makes Carly Fiorina president of the CIA's Citizen Advisory Board. So now this picture looks like this. Christine Maxwell's Gilead goes into the FBI. Christine Maxwell's Gilead plus Hewlett-Packard servers went to the NSA and possibly the CIA. She also very likely through information on demand, works with the Library of Congress. Do you see how deep this goes? And one more thing about Christine before we move on to Isabel. Christine Maxwell prepares and presents first ISOC discussion paper to UNESCO. This is the Internet Society, and this was in the year 2000. It says it on here somewhere. Oh, here it is. If we look at what we've got so far with the Maxwell family, we've got Robert Maxwell, suspected Mossad, KGB, possibly MI6, with his daughter Ghislaine and her friend Jeffrey Epstein creating a sexual blackmail operation, influencing very powerful people and scientists in particular, and it also a source of dark pool funding. Jeffrey Epstein supposedly was a financial advisor to all these billionaires, but was he really? Maybe he was just a conduit for their money to go to finance some creepy Frankenstein science projects. Robert Maxwell's other daughter, Christine, creates information on demand, Magellan and Gilead. Gilead, between these three, they're in the Library of Congress, the National Security Agency, the FBI, the Treasury, that's by extension of the FBI contract, possibly the CIA, HP servers, and she works with the United Nations and is an advisor to UNESCO. Now we'll move to her sister, Isabel. Isabel Maxwell, of course, was partners with Christine in the Magellan search engine, which sold to Excite. But the big deal with Isabel is this company, ComTouch. Apparently, she was asked to be president of that company, I think 1997 or 1999. We'll get to it in a minute. And this is an Israeli software company, apparently. What is it? What does it do? It started out mostly with email, but it did move to other areas. In 2000, its S.T.C filing describes it as a leading global provider of outsourced, integrated, web-based email and messaging solutions to businesses. Their customers are large and small businesses who offer web-based email through their websites. As of December 31st, 1999, they had over 250 global customers. Through our customers' sites, we serve approximately 8.4 million active email boxes. We also serve over 1 million active email boxes to small business and websites through our ZapZone network. I didn't even dig on that. Who knows what that is or where that went? The thing about their email service is it offered features that other emails did not. In fact, one of the big ones was that it was multiple languages, and that's how they can have these global customers. Also down here, it notes that this email gave the user the ability to send and receive faxes and voicemail. It also allowed forwarding from other email addresses. The email client was called Pronto. And they made sure that it wasn't just a PC or Windows-based thing. They partnered with a company early on to make sure it could be used with Unix. So that's what ComTouch was at the time. Pronto Mail, and it had all these extra features that other email didn't. And this voice recording thing is really interesting. In this article here it's from 1996, this guy was reviewing a bunch of email programs, and he says that Pronto has a recorder built into the program so that you can send voicemails. So it's not just the ability to attach the voice files or the WAV files. It had a recorder built into it. Now think of all the warnings we've had just in the last decade about your computer camera being able to be accessed remotely and they turn it on and off. Well, this is way back in the day. Could they have been installing the recorder so that they could turn it on and off when they wanted? And their customers, don't forget, were mainly large and medium-sized businesses. I don't know. I'm not accusing them of this. I'm just saying what's possible. In this article, Daughter of Invention in The Guardian in 2000, they talk about Isabel Maxwell coming on as president of ComTouch. Further in that article, we learn that the Israeli firm ComTouch came knocking on her door in 1997. The company was founded in 1991 by a group of technology-savvy former Army officers led by Gideon Mantell, a bomb disposal expert, it says here. And look how they try to make it all homey and nice. ComTouch was based in an old kibbutz chicken coop. These people and their legends of the startups. Well, we met at a truck stop over flapjacks. I was just sitting there eating, and in wandered Bill Gates, and we decided to start a company, and now we're mega billionaires that control the earth and initiate vaccine programs and make fake meat that we try to pass off as real. It was just a homey little chicken coop where all this started, right? These stories, they drive me crazy. Okay, but Gideon Mantell, I don't know if he ever was a bomb disposal expert. I guess they were trying to make him sound important. Gideon, it says here, was co-founder and CEO of Financial Leverages Limited before he made ComTouch, and also served as the CFO of the Galley Group, one of Israel's largest consumer product companies. That's who he really is. In this article from 1999, we learned that companies and websites such as Excite, Discovery Channel, and Business Week pay ComTouch to provide email services to them, and they say that they're going to be working with Microsoft. Also, they say that Ericsson, the mobile phone maker, is going to be working with Microsoft to develop software to bring the internet features to wireless phones. This is back in 1999. In 2004, we noticed that ComTouch has moved into anti-spam software, and this is where they start to get into internet security, which becomes more and more important to their business. In 2013 article, we see that ComTouch has moved into Google. When one uses Google's Gmail, the email antivirus is integrated with ComTouch Software Development Kit, a set of software libraries which becomes integrated into Gmail software. So ComTouch was in with Google Mail, Gmail, in at least 2013, but we don't know how much earlier than that. Here they are explaining that ComTouch's stuff is in the cloud and it therefore can intercept things before they get to a customer's email. They, of course, bill this as anti-malware and anti-phishing measures. In this graphic, we see that they use URL filtering, which they say is for web security, parental control, business productivity, and that it's available for mobile devices. I'm just wondering what this might mean for control of information. Who is the one blocking the URLs? Of course, they're going to say that it's user set. But what if it isn't? What if it isn't user set? These guys are providing the capability for censorship to all the big companies. They had a name change in 2014 to Siren. And as of 2019, these are the companies that it's working with. Some of the companies: Intel, Google, T-Mobile, Microsoft, Dell, Checkpoint, and more, of course. They say they have offices in McLean, Virginia, Israel, Germany, UK, and Iceland. Further in this article, we learned that in July 2017, the private equity firm Warburg Pincus announced it had acquired a 21.3% stake in Siren. Warburg Pincus. That's just a name that should raise a red flag. And finally, wrapping up, Isabel Maxwell. She's a member of the World Economic Forum. This is major transhumanist, globalist powerhouse. It is a who's who of the people that I personally worry about. This is a still from one of their videos about the fourth industrial revolution. I refer to this video a lot because it scared me. It deeply scared me, this video. You should go watch it. I'll link to it in the description box. But you can see what they're after here. Look how realistic that is. And Isabel Maxwell is part of that. It all relates. It all relates. And Bud Gray from that blog, in that article that he wrote, How Globalists Are E-Managing Us, he sums up the worries very well here. I do not allege that Maxwell has done anything illegal. Perhaps others with more knowledge of the law could, and maybe illegal is not the best word to describe what they and their kind have done to us. But it is clear that Gilead was not chosen without good reason by the federal government to develop the next generation of information management software, and I dare say that the good reason the government has in mind is not good for American citizens. There are tremendous socio-political forces at work in the world today. There are people, foreign and domestic, who would reshape our nation into something not based on the traditional values which made it great, and redirect its course towards subordination to unaccountable rulers. These people are convinced that they are working for a higher goal and the betterment of mankind. They believe deep down in their hearts that they know more than the rest of us, and so they have both the right and the duty to act. The Maxwell family is very, very key in the subversion of the West. Very key, in my opinion. And it speaks to what Bud Gray wrote in those 2 paragraphs. But I also think there is straight up greed, profit motive, and a cultural thing at play here too. Growing up in the Maxwell household, this would have been what you were steeped in. It is into their bones, I believe. Their lives aren't their lives, really. Their lives are like a mission. And if you look at it, just even on the surface level, why aren't these people, if they are so loyal to Israel, why aren't they living there? If they are British citizens, why aren't they living and working there? What are they doing over in the United States? Selling their specialty software with recording devices and URL filtering and harvesting data from every possible area that they can. Why are they doing that all in the United States? Why aren't they aiming this at their own country? Gee, I wonder. I just like to finish with a graphic to remind you where we've been. Robert Maxwell, suspected triple agent, his daughter and her partner Jeffrey Epstein, running a sex trafficking operation which was used to finance their science projects and compromise people who might otherwise stand in their way. I mean, for example, who knows if any of these organizations would have worked with Christine Maxwell and Gilead had there not been compromise on key figures involved, right? And then we have Isabel, who through her specialty multilingual listening device equipped email service, working with an Israeli firm, got into all of these companies, major companies, and more. And all of them have ties to these globalist organizations. While I was researching all of this, I came across so much more information. And they're kind of tangential to all of these things that I've just talked about. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to record a part 2. But you really will have to listen to this one first to understand what I'm referencing in the second one. In the second one, it's going to be about the people that Christine and Isabel married or are still married to. There's so many things in there, I can't even describe it to you. I'm going to talk about Bill Browder for a little bit in there and Alpha Bank. I'm going to talk about the EDGE organization and Mad Science, the Santa Fe Institute and transhumanism. All kinds of things that I can't even remember. Oh, Vicky Ward makes another appearance because of Carly Fiorina and her role in getting Gilead software into the NSA. There's a whole bunch of stuff in part 2. But for now, I'm going to stop talking. This is a follow-up to my last video, which went into detail about Christine and Isabel Maxwell's companies, software companies, that were adopted by U.S. intelligence agencies and all the major social media companies. Well, many of them anyway. Here's the graphic that I left you with at the end. That's where we left off. And now I want to take you down the roads that sort of branched off these different investigations. And some of them are woo-woo and some of them are just straight up business and tech related. The first one actually will look back at Robert Maxwell's death and an article that was written at that time in the San Francisco Examiner, 1991. It's talking about Maxwell's business empire and its holdings just in the San Francisco Bay Area. One of the companies they mention is Sphere Incorporated, a San Leandro company that sells computer game software under the label Spectrum Holobyte. The Mirror Group, through Maxwell, owned an 80% stake in Sphere Incorporated. Christine and Kevin Maxwell were on the board of Sphere Incorporated. The CEO of that company was Gilman Louie. And what did he do after that? Gilman Louie went on to be the head of the CIA venture capital fund in QTEL. He was the head of the CIA venture capital firm In-Q-Tel. And he had a very direct, close, and intimate relationship with Robert Maxwell, Kevin Maxwell, and Christine Maxwell. In-Q-Tel and the CIA, they worked together because the CIA wanted to develop technological tools, and it needed someone with expertise. It hired Gilman Louie. I wonder why. I wonder what strings got pulled there. And then Gilman Louie would oversee all kinds of projects, such as, let's look at this. This is from CBS News, by the way. Social media. Social media is a tool of the CIA. Seriously, it says. This is from 2011. You don't need to wear a tinfoil hat to believe the CIA is using Facebook, Twitter, Google, and other social medias to spy on people. They say that the CIA was publishing a helpful list of press releases on all the social media ventures it sponsors via its technology investment arm, In-Q-Tel. So that's boom number one. Gilman Louie, 80% owned by the Maxwells, and had Christine and Kevin sitting on his board of directors right before he started as head of the CIA's venture capital firm In-Q-Tel. What's next? Isabel Maxwell ran ComTouch, which became Siren, and her software got into all of these things. I was looking up SEC filings about this, and I ran across this one. CrowdStrike Holdings. You might know CrowdStrike because it has a big role in Spygate, in Russiagate, particularly with regards to the DNC hack. So this relates to Seth Rich. This relates to Debbie Wasserman Schultz and possibly the Awan brothers. There's people out there that cover both In-Q-Tel and CrowdStrike extensively. I'm not going to get into the background here. I just want to show you the one thing I found. It lists Carrie J. Davis as a director of CrowdStrike. And in that same filing, they describe Carrie J. Davis's qualifications. And they say that he currently serves on the board of directors of Siren. So now we have Siren linked to CrowdStrike. And Isabel Maxwell is co-founder and still involved, as far as I know, with Siren. There's another Maxwell connection right back to the heart of Spygate. Here's an article here you could pause and read if you want to know a little bit more about it. All of this will be linked down in the description box as well, like usual, in the reference section. Not all of it, but a lot of things. All right, let's look at Isabel's husbands. The first guy, Carl Gerasi. He's not that interesting by himself. I couldn't find anything interesting, but his dad, Isabel's father-in-law, Carl, sure is. Look how important he is. The Republic of Bulgaria put him on a postage stamp. Why? Because Carl Gerasi is father of the birth control pill. That's right. You know the cultural impact the birth control pill had on the West? There's good documentaries out there about it. Go have a look. This man's invention of the birth control pill is highly significant. It was produced by a company called Syntec. Where? In Mexico City. They talk about having to go down there and groom Mexican scientists to work with them in their lab. And there's a whole big other side story to this too that involves some random banker making a huge bet on Syntec as it was going to go belly up, and then boom, they invent the birth control pill. Gerasi went on afterwards to become a professor of chemistry at Stanford, and he served as president of Syntex in Palo Alto. Carl Gerasi was also a member of Edge.org. This is John Brockman's foundation, where he brings together the brightest minds in the world. He has an annual billionaires dinner where Google's Larry Page and Sergey Brin go. Ann Wojcicki from YouTube goes there. Amazon's Jeff Bezos goes there. I could go on for 15 minutes naming the people that go there. These billionaire dinners were significant in another way because Jeffrey Epstein himself bankrolled them. Jeffrey Epstein bankrolled the exclusive Edge Billionaires dinners. They tried to get rid of the evidence. There were lots of photos of this. Here's one which remains, but Jeffrey Epstein himself is not in it. People speculate that this is his plane, though, because his plane was used to ferry these people back and forth. There's some significant members of the EDGE organization there, and also people who drastically changed culture, like Richard Dawkins, for example. So you see all these deep connections. Private jets, parties, and eugenics. We'll leave him there. We'll go to Isabel's next husband, a guy called Al Seckel. Al Seckel is also a member of the edge.org. He was a visual illusionist, apparently. This is him giving a TED Talk in 2007. Al Seckel was interviewed by Jeffrey Epstein in 2010. This is a very long interview, and he goes on and on about his theories about physics and the nature of reality. But this is where it gets a little bit more interesting. In this Daily Beast article from August 2019, they say, Isabel followed the family tradition of going bankrupt in 2015 despite having been a multimillionaire. That move may have been related to the untimely demise at age 56 of her third husband, the infamous con man, now they call him, Al Seckel. But the interesting part is that in that Daily Beast article, they discuss how they tried to confirm that Al Seckel really died, and they couldn't. This is what it says. A paid obituary was published on Legacy.com, supposedly after appearing in the San Gabriel Valley Tribune, but it does not appear on the paper's website. And they talk about how they dug around and they couldn't find any other actual evidence of Seckel having died. And then it occurred to me, okay, this is very handy, isn't it? If you own Legacy.com, you can fake people's deaths all over the place. All right, what's next? In this article from 1999, it talks about Isabel's childhood and all the people her dad knew and the people that might be at her house when she gets home from school. One of them is Professor Murray Gell-Mann, who was awarded the Nobel Prize in Physics, blah, blah, blah. He's an interesting guy. Here he is as a member of edge.org. And it says that he started the Santa Fe Institute. He's a founder of the Santa Fe Institute from back in 1984. Here we see that Gell-Mann also spent several periods at CERN. CERN, the big, large Hadron Collider in Switzerland or Sweden. Switzerland? Can't remember where it is right now. But a lot of people wonder what really goes on at CERN. It's kind of a sketchy, crazy place. And the Santa Fe Institute, look at their symbol. Kind of has a Nazi vibe to me. Here's some of the types of projects that they work on. Efforts to create artificial life, chaos theory, genetic algorithms, econophysics, systems biology, all this kind of merging of man and machine. It's called technocracy. It's called cybernetics as well. But the part that's really strange is that they partner with the U.S. Department of Energy on various studies. And you see here that they were interested in mutation, genetics, and evolution at the U.S. Department of Energy. When I think of Department of Energy, I'm thinking of oil and gas, fracking, dams, hydroelectric power, nuclear energy, that sort of thing. Why are they looking at genetics and human language and chaos theory and synthetic biology? Why are they looking at that kind of thing? Also, here are the authors of that paper: Murray Gell-Mann, Christine Maxwell. There she is again. They're like ghosts. They appear in all of these places. Let's look at a map. Where is the Santa Fe Institute? Here it is up here on the map. And what's 59 minutes away? But the Zorro Ranch, Epstein's ranch in Santa Fe, is 59 minutes away from the Santa Fe Institute. But you know what? That's not the only interesting thing around there. Did you know that the Bronfman family, yes, the Bronfmans, those Bronfmans, have a church in Santa Fe, New Mexico? It's called the União do Vegetal. And basically what it did was it got itself a license to import ayahuasca under the guise of being a religion. This is their cult compound, I guess. The actual address is over here with this little shack. But look what's across the road. I have a feeling this is the actual Uneo de Vegetal compound here. I might do a video on this separately, so we'll leave it there for now. But this is what it looks like. The Santa Fe Institute is a couple of minutes away by car from the ayahuasca cult, and that's only an hour away from Epstein's ranch. Very interesting. Somewhere right over here is the Los Alamos Labs. That's the nuclear testing ground. There's also a tunnel system that crosses the border between Colorado and New Mexico. It's called the Chama San Juan Tunnel. People always like to look for these tunnels. It's 26 miles long. Maybe someone out there wants to dig on that, because that might lead somewhere too. It's quite close to the Santa Fe Institute, really. Moving on to the next thing. We're going to go to Christine Maxwell now. Remember her? With Gilead? And Gilead had gotten into the FBI. It also got into Hewlett-Packard servers. And then Hewlett-Packard supplied the computers and servers to the NSA. And we were talking about, in my last video, that it was Michael Hayden at the time. The story is he phoned Carly Fiorina at HP and he said, "Oh my gosh, we've just had September 11th, send us some new servers. We need more computing power." And she obliged. But we look back and we see that Gilead software had already been installed. And then we learned that Carly Fiorina had only been put in as the CEO of Hewlett-Packard in 1999. And in 1999, that's when they started using Gilead software. So then that raises some questions about why Fiorina was chosen to head HP. She was a massive failure as the leader of HP, according to most of the employees there. And the company went downhill after that. She actually got booted out only a couple years later. And Michael Hayden, what became of him? Well, see, he transferred from the NSA over to the CIA. And maybe as a reward, that's why he made Carly Fiorina the first head of the Central Intelligence Agency's External Advisory Board. So I'm going to argue that they wanted Carly Fiorina in there so that they would have a friendly CEO who would agree to put Gilead software in the servers. And then I look into that. Is that possible? I see this article from Vicky Ward from 2002, and she says, Fiorina would perhaps not have been considered for the job had it not been for her appearance in 1998 on the cover of Fortune as #1 on the list of world's top women in business. Until that moment, there'd only been one story written about her in Investor's Business Daily. Weird. Out of the blue, somebody at Fortune puts Carly Fiorina, a totally unknown quantity, on the cover of Fortune magazine. And then that cover brings Carly Fiorina to the attention of somebody at Hewlett-Packard who says, hey, let's nominate her to be CEO. And most of the board, by the way, at HP apparently didn't want her, but she got pushed through anyway. So it's like, if this one important article hadn't have been written, would she even have been in that position? Who was editor at Fortune magazine at the time that decision was made to put Carly Fiorina on the cover? It was a guy called Marshall Loeb. His father is Monroe Harriman Loeb. Do you know these names? These are significant names. Fritz Springmeier wrote a book called Bloodlines of the Illuminati. Both the Harriman and Loeb families feature prominently in this book. And Marshall Loeb's dad is called Monroe Harriman Loeb. Now, because information isn't as freely available as it was even 5 years ago, I can't be sure that these Loebs are connected to the 11 bloodlines of the Illuminati Loebs. But look at that name, and you tell me what you think. Also, Vicky Ward. Vicky Ward is always writing the stories that surround these people. Vicky Ward is the journalist who brought us the first long-form expose of Jeffrey Epstein back in 2003. And then just recently, she said, remember, I tried to warn you about Jeffrey Epstein back in 2003. But what didn't she write in that article in 2003? She didn't write about the sexual allegations against him at all, even though she admits she had several people coming to her with good evidence, she says. And she wanted to put the stories in. That's her story now. That's her story now. She says she tried to warn everybody. It wasn't her fault. She wanted to put the stories in to Vanity Fair, but she didn't because of her editor. If it were true that Vicky Ward really was on the side of the little guy at that time, and she believed these women who were coming forward and making these allegations against Jeffrey and Ghislaine, then would we have these pictures today? This is from May 2009. This is Vicky Ward with Ghislaine Maxwell. And in this photo from April 1st, 2008, Vicky Ward hosted a party for La Mer, and this is Ghislaine Maxwell at that party. So why is Vicky Ward always getting the scoop on all of these things? You know who else she wrote about, by the way? The D.C. Madam. Well, actually, hold on. I misspoke. She didn't write about her. She was in the process of working with the D.C. Madam when the D.C. Madam killed herself. And there's way more. Vicky Ward's on the scene all the time. It just raises my eyebrow, that's all. Michael Hayden, by the way, the NSA director who worked with Carly Fiorina, he went on afterwards, after he left the government, to work with the Chertoff Group, Michael Chertoff. And also, he is on the board of directors for Caliburn International, a military contractor that oversees operations for Homestead Temporary Shelter for Unaccompanied Children. Oh, that doesn't sound like it has trouble written all over it, does it? Okay, what have we got? You know what? This has gotten so long already, and I haven't even gotten into Christine Maxwell's husband and her father-in-law and the unbelievable connections there. What we'll start with is we'll look back at this article from 1991 after Robert Maxwell first died and they were reviewing his holdings in the Bay Area. Just for interest's sake, I'll tell you what they are. They mention Research on Demand, Thomas Cook Travel, Jossie Bass, Molecular Design Limited, and Leonardo. That's the one I'm going to look at because that is the baby of Christine Maxwell's husband, Roger Molina. Roger Molina runs Leonardo, published by Pergamon Press, which is the Maxwell connection, but it's housed in MIT Media Labs. MIT Media Labs is what Aaron Swartz hacked. A recent development on the MIT front, Ronan Farrow has come out and written a piece for The New Yorker, exposing MIT's deeper ties to Epstein and how they've accepted a lot of funding from him, calling it anonymous so that they can hide their affiliation with Epstein. And Roger Molina's publication, Leonardo, was hosted there. Here's something Leonardo is into. Here's a conference it's sponsoring, The Future of the Body in Context of Neurotechnology. The future of the body. Remember that World Economic Forum Fourth Industrial Revolution video that I said scared me so much? It's exactly what they're talking about. They want to merge human and machine. This is not a joke. This is real. And you can see how powerful and embedded the people who think that way are. What else have I got about Leonardo? Right, here's my favorite part of this story. Frank Molina and the Jet Propulsion Labs that became NASA, basically. He was partners with a guy called Jack Parsons. Jack Parsons went on to be a disciple, more or less, of Aleister Crowley. Aleister Crowley and the OTO, the Ordo Templi Orientis. It was this mystery school. Here is a picture of Aleister Crowley in some of his garb. And this Twitterer here, New World Order of the Time broadcast, points out, well, they are all Illuminists from her education, Crowley, Madame Blavatsky students of the mystery school. Following Isis, Horus, and Osiris, Epstein's castle had Horus perched on top next to the Horizon Dome. Yes, look at the similarities. And it links back there. Now, okay, Jack Parsons, Aleister Crowley, and L. Ron Hubbard all knew each other, basically, because Jack Parsons started a temple of the OTO. It was called the Agape Temple in California. And through that, he did this ceremony, I believe with L. Ron Hubbard, called the Babylon Working, where they tried to bring forth a moon child. This is an occult ritual, but this is well documented. This happened. And this was all related, don't forget, to NASA. Roger Molina's dad was partners with Frank Molina, who was partners with Jack Parsons, who was into all of this stuff. Frank Molina was suspected of being a communist, and the FBI was on his tail, and he left the United States and went to France, by the way. That's what happened to him. But this story here, Leonardo's Strange Angel, behind the scenes with Jack Parsons and Frank Molina. The not-so-well-known story of Leonardo's founder, Frank Molina, and Strange Angel, Jack Parsons. This story is about what I just told you about Babylon Working and the connections to Crowley. But it has an extra piece that I don't know if a lot of people know about. This filmmaker that was going to make this documentary or TV series called Strange Angel, he was doing his research and he went to Paris because one of the characters' mothers is from Paris. And it says, amongst personal correspondence and scientific papers lay a neatly typewritten story written by Molina and Parsons. It was dated 1937, and scrawled on the front page were the words MGM Project. At that time, Molina was working as an assistant in the Caltech wind tunnel for pennies an hour, while Parsons had a part-time job at an explosives company. Their pitiful salaries provided all the funding for their rocketry research, and they had spent hours scouring scrapyards and rubbish dumps for odds and ends they could use in their experiments. The MGM project was a Hail Mary attempt to garner movie money to finance their scientific dream. The story itself is a garish mix of science fiction and social justice with a dash of occult weirdness thrown in. Laced with the politics of the day, it tells the tale of a bunch of charismatic young men devoted to designing and building rockets. To call it a roman à clef does not quite do it justice, for while it transparently traces the young rocketeers' scientific struggles and wistful hopes, it also eerily foretells their futures. This is where it gets super, super weird. Pay attention. My mind was blown by this. Set in the Institute, a scientific establishment not unlike Caltech, the story's hero is Franklin Hamilton, a genius physicist and rocket scientist whose black, closely cut, slightly curly hair and good-looking, sharply chiseled face make him a dead ringer for Parsons himself. Thomas Elwood, a union organizer, lover of classical music, and man with social conscience, is the clear doppelganger of Molina. As in real life, the scientists' greatest problem is a lack of financial backing, and their rocket tests often end in explosions, as did those of Molina and Parsons. But while their real-life work was almost universally ignored, in their fictional world, it's being spied upon by powerful, shadowy forces. Part thriller and part socialist manifesto, the story dashes headlong into espionage, murder, and all the intricacies of organized labor. Real life and fictional life diverge when Hamilton and Elwood receive a donation of $100,000 from a wealthy aircraft manufacturer, only to find the manufacturer plans to sell their rocket plans to the Nazis. Well, I don't know if fiction and real life diverge, because Jack Parsons did work for Howard Hughes for a while. And Howard Hughes, as you know, ended up a recluse, paranoid, and allegedly it ended up that he hated Jack Parsons. They became mortal enemies. So this part, the donation of $100,000 from a wealthy aircraft manufacturer, could be Howard Hughes. During World War II, the company designed and built several prototype aircrafts at Hughes Airport. These included the famous Hughes H-4 Hercules, And they detail the other things that were built there. Howard Hughes was a wealthy aircraft manufacturer who Jack Parsons worked with. You're telling me they wrote this screenplay in 1937. Supposedly they wrote this story in 1937. And they foretold exactly what happened in their lives. Well before rockets were even a thing, by the way. Before the Nazis even started with rockets, by the way. Okay, it continues. Parsons and Molina worked on the story every Monday night for at least a year before sending it to NGM. But perhaps unsurprisingly, its mix of earnest social realism and the hardcore scientific speculation failed to pique the studio's interest. Nevertheless, the story proved to be a strangely prophetic piece of work. In the story, Elwood is pilloried for his, quote, un-American beliefs, and Molina would be later in his life, causing him to leave the United States and relocate to France after the war. True. Similarly, a character in the story with strong occult interests is killed in an explosion, just as Parsons would be in 1952. Perhaps most surprising of all was the young rocketeer's story foresaw the Nazis' obsession with rockets long before the popular press or indeed the U.S. government did. Unbelievable. You are watching a scripted movie. How far back did this movie start? How could it be that they were working for pennies a day doing unrelated things? Parsons sounds, if you look at his background, he just sounds like a nut. He didn't have education. They're calling him a genius, but really he just liked to blow things up, basically. How could it be that a guy like that and his friend Frank Molina wrote this whole story of how this whole thing actually would end up going for the next 20 years in 1937? You tell me. You tell me. Were Molina and Parsons actors in a real script? I can think... it's possible. It's all an illusion. What was Aleister Crowley's big thing? Magic. What is magic? Magic is con artistry with flair. Magic is changing reality by changing the perceptions of the people around you. Here's a mind blower. Aleister Crowley, who has been accused of being a secret agent, had the same lawyer in England as Robert Maxwell, Isidore Kerman. In this book, it says, for instance, during the trial and for the decade following, Crowley enjoyed the services of prominent West End solicitor Isidore Kerman, a noted bon vivant, real estate speculator, and later advisor to the press baron Robert Maxwell. Advisor or handler? So there's a Crowley-Maxwell connection. 1 degree of separation. Boom. You see why that blew my mind. Oh, by the way, jet expert killed by blast, mother ends life in grief. This is Jack Parsons when he died, supposedly in a random explosion, you know, because he was always playing with rocket fuel and things like that. He died suddenly. His mom also killed herself. Get rid of the witnesses? Maybe I'm too cynical. Maybe that's it. Well, I've got to stop. I've got to stop talking now. If you liked this whirlwind tour of some of the tentacles that relate to Isabel and Christine Maxwell's involvement in the tech industry, their husbands, In-Q-Tel and Gilman Louis, the CrowdStrike implications. If you liked this video, please leave me a thumbs up. Please leave me a... I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, don't forget to thumbs up, comment, share the video around. I'd love to know what you thought of it. I guess that's all. I've kept you long enough. Until next time, everybody. Peace out.